blast in the dust. The desert world of Vereen was silent except for the hum of wind brushing over the golden dunes. Elias Ward wiped the sweat from his brow as he adjusted the solar relay on his small rover. He was an engineer from Earth, working for a trade company that repaired mining equipment for frontier colonies. Life here was quiet, lonely, and simple, and that's exactly how he liked it. No politics, no wars, just sand, machines, and silence. But that peace shattered in one single moment. A sudden shockwave rolled through the ground and the sky flashed white. The roar that followed was deafening, a massive explosion somewhere beyond the ridge. Elias turned toward the plume of smoke rising in the distance, his heart pounding. Through his visor, he could see fire spreading near the refugee convoy that had arrived that morning. Without thinking, he jumped into his rover and sped toward the chaos. The wind howled, carrying dust that stung his face. He could hear screams through the comm network, voices in alien dialects. Pleading for help, his rover bounced over the uneven terrain until he saw the wreckage up close. The convoy of small cargo ships had been blown apart. Metal twisted, fires burning and smoke rising like black fingers into the air. Bodies lay across the sand, some human, some alien, all burned or broken. Elias's breath hitched, but he forced himself to move. He checked the first few survivors, nothing he could do. Then he heard it, a faint whimper, soft and frightened, coming from beneath a piece of metal plating. He rushed toward it, hands shaking as he pushed debris aside. Underneath was a small alien girl, no older than 10 in human years. Her skin shimmered faintly silver, her hair glowing with soft blue light. Her eyes, large, luminous, terrified, locked on his face. "Please," she whispered in broken English, "help me." Elias didn't hesitate. He pulled her free and carried her toward the rover. He could hear movement behind him, shadows emerging from the smoke, armed figures. They weren't rescuers. They were attackers, and they had spotted him. "Stay down," he said, crouching low. He set the girl behind a rock and pulled out his small plasma cutter. It wasn't a weapon, but it was all he had. The attackers began firing, bolts of red light searing across the sand. He ducked, returned a few wild shots, then heard the shrill whistle of something worse, a grenade. It landed just meters away, rolling toward the child. Time slowed. Elias didn't think. He just moved. He threw himself over her, arms wrapped around her small body as the grenade exploded. Pain filled his body, sharp metal tearing through flesh, fire swallowing his vision. He couldn't breathe, couldn't see, but he could feel her trembling beneath him, her small hands pressed against his chest, glowing faintly blue. He coughed, forcing out words through blood. "You're safe now." The world blurred, sound faded, and darkness crept in for a moment. He saw something strange. The girl's eyes brightened until they shone like twin stars. A soft hum filled the air and the burning around him stopped. He thought it was just the end, his mind fading into hallucination. But before he lost consciousness, he saw figures stepping through the smoke. Tall, armored warriors, their armor glowing with sigils of light. They moved like ghosts, silent, fast, and graceful. One of them knelt beside him, placing a hand on his chest. The warrior's voice echoed like thunder through the comm. He took the blast. For the air. The alien girl reached for Elias's face as his eyes closed. Her voice trembled as she whispered in her own tongue, words he couldn't understand. The last thing he felt was warmth spreading through his wounds, light crawling across his body. Then everything went black. Silence returned to the desert. Only the wind moved now, carrying dust and smoke away. The armored warriors gathered the fallen, their leader lifting the unconscious human carefully into his arms. "Bring him to the hall," the commander said, his voice low but full of respect. "The human has earned the mark." As the warriors vanished into their transport, the desert once again became quiet. But the name of Elias Ward was already being whispered among them. The man who took the blast to save the heir of the Seraph Order. A human who would wake not among enemies but among legends. And the galaxy, though it did not yet know it, was about to change forever. The Hall of the Fallen, Elias awoke to a soft hum. Not the hum of machines he knew, but something deeper, alive, rhythmic. Like a heartbeat beneath metal walls. He tried to move, but his body felt heavy, as if wrapped in invisible chains. A warm light pulsed over his skin, repairing torn flesh, sealing wounds that should have killed him. When his eyes focused, he saw a ceiling of silver threads glowing, moving, weaving patterns like veins of light. The air smelled strange, clean yet electric. as if it had never been touched by dust. He turned his head slightly and froze. A tall figure stood beside his bed, armored in white and gold, face hidden behind a mask with two burning blue eyes. The figure spoke in a voice deep and calm. "You are awake. Human." Elias blinked, trying to speak, his voice rough and broken. Where am I?" The figure hesitated, then said, "In the fortress of the Seraph Order. Among those you saved?" He tried to sit up, but the pain burned through his chest. The armored warrior placed a hand on his shoulder, and a cool energy numbed the pain instantly. Elias glanced down and saw his wounds covered in silver markings, living metal that pulsed like blood. What did you do to me?" he whispered. The warrior replied softly, "We saved you as you saved our heir." The words struck him like thunder. "The girl?" he asked. "Is she safe?" "She lives," the warrior answered, "because you took the flame meant to end her." Elias looked confused. "Flame? It was just an explosion." The warrior shook his head slowly. "No, human. It was a weapon born of shadow energy, meant to kill the future ruler of our kind." Elias leaned back. Trying to understand, he wasn't supposed to be a hero. He was just a mechanic fixing power conduits, not saving alien royalty. Before he could say more, the door opened, and bright blue light spilled into the chamber. The little girl entered, alive, unharmed, wearing a soft silver robe that shimmered with starlight. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. You live!" she said with joy, running to his bedside. Elias smiled weakly. "You're okay. That's what matters." The warrior beside him bowed slightly. "Heir Saris, you should not—" She cut him off, her small voice steady. "He saved me. I go where he goes." Elias blinked, surprised. "Heir?" The child smiled shyly. "Saris of House Luma, daughter of the Order. But you can just call me Sari." Her tone carried warmth, but also a strange power, like she carried more than her small body should hold. Elias noticed something then. Faint marks glowing on his forearm, the same patterns that were on her hands. "What is this?" he asked, staring at the lines of light on his skin. Saris hesitated, then said quietly, "It means you are my protector." He frowned. "Protector?" The armored warrior stepped forward, his voice solemn. "By the ancient bond. When one takes the flame to shield the heir, the light marks him forever. He becomes bound to her life and fate." Elias stared, lost for words. Bound to an alien child he just met? Saris looked up at him with those glowing eyes and whispered, "You didn't just save me. You became part of our story." Suddenly the ground trembled. The walls of the fortress shuddered, alarms flashing red. The warrior turned sharply, his armor flaring with light. "They found us again." He looked at Elias. "Stay with the heir, human. Do not move." But Elias, half awake and still weak, forced himself to sit. "What's happening?" the warrior replied as he rushed out. "The assassins. They are not done." Saris grabbed his hand, her small fingers warm, glowing faintly blue. Elias felt a strange energy pulse through him, his pain fading, his strength returning. "Stay still," she said softly. "I can help you heal faster." Light spread from her palm into his body, mending what even alien medicine hadn't finished. He gasped as strength returned to his muscles, the silver marks on his skin brightening. Outside, the echo of battle filled the halls, energy blasts, clashing metal, distant roars. Saris looked toward the door, fear in her eyes. "They're coming for me again." Elias clenched his fists, the marks on his arm glowing brighter with every heartbeat. He didn't understand this world, didn't understand the rules or powers or titles. But he knew one thing: he wasn't letting them hurt her again. He stood unsteady but determined. "Siri, stay behind me," he said, his voice calm but firm. The door burst open, smoke pouring in, and two dark-clad intruders stepped through, their armor black as night, their weapons humming with energy. They looked at Elias and laughed. A human? The protector? How pathetic. Elias didn't answer. He reached for the nearest thing, a broken metal rod, and charged. The intruders fired, bolts of light cutting through the air. One struck him across the shoulder, but he didn't stop. The silver marks on his body flared, absorbing the energy, and his eyes flashed blue for a heartbeat. He slammed the rod into one attacker's helmet, knocking him back with shocking strength. The second raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Saris lifted her hand. A wave of energy burst from her palm, throwing the enemy across the chamber. When the smoke cleared, Elias turned, staring at her in awe. She looked back, her breathing heavy, her eyes glowing like twin suns. They wanted the heir dead, she whispered, but now, they'll learn what happens when you touch a protector. The fortress alarms faded, replaced by silence again. Elias dropped the rod, breathing hard, looking around at the ruined room. He realized something had changed, not just around him, but within him. The light that once came from her now answered to him too. As the other warriors entered and saw the defeated assassins, they stopped in shock. Their commander stared at Elias and said quietly, "Impossible. The human carries the seraph light." Elias met his gaze, confused but calm. "Then you'd better tell me what that means." The commander bowed slightly, his tone full of respect. "It means, Elias Ward, you are no longer just a man." The glow on his arm pulsed once more, like a heartbeat of destiny, and in that moment, Elias realized, whatever world he had fallen into, there was no going back. Because the galaxy's deadliest warriors had just claimed him as one of their own. The training of the Protector days turned into weeks. Though Elias could hardly tell, the fortress of the Seraph Order had no sunrise or sunset, only the eternal silver glow that flowed through its walls like living light. He had been healed, fed, and given quarters fit for a soldier. Yet every time he closed his eyes, he still heard the explosion in the desert. He wasn't a warrior, not really, but something in him had changed since that day. The silver marks on his body pulsed with strange energy, reacting to his heartbeat, to Ceres's presence, and sometimes to danger. The Seraph warriors watched him with curiosity and suspicion. Some whispered that it was blasphemy for a human to carry the Protector's mark. Others stared with quiet awe, for none had ever taken the flame and lived. Elias ignored their stares and focused on what he could control, learning, adapting, surviving. Each morning he trained in the great arena, a place carved from shimmering crystal and surrounded by gravity fields that made every step heavy and every strike powerful. His mentor was Commander Kale, the same armored warrior who had first found him in the desert. Kale was patient but ruthless, his voice like iron when he spoke. "You rely on instinct," Kale said, blocking one of Elias's clumsy strikes with his forearm. "But instinct without purpose is chaos." Elias panted, sweat dripping from his brow. "Then teach me purpose." Kale's expression beneath his mask was unreadable, but his tone softened slightly. "Purpose is what binds power, human. The light within you listens only to conviction." Elias didn't understand at first, but when Kale swung his blade again, something inside him responded. The silver marks along his arms blazed, his reflexes sharpened, and his hand moved before his mind could think. He caught the strike, barehanded, stopping the glowing sword mid-air. A shockwave rippled across the arena, knocking dust and sparks into the air. The onlookers gasped. Kale slowly stepped back, his tone filled with measured respect. "The light answers you faster than I thought." Elias looked down at his hands, trembling slightly. "It's like it knows what I want to do before I do." Kyle nodded. "That is the Seraph light, born from sacrifice, fueled by courage. The heir's bond awakened it within you." Elias frowned. "So it's her power." Kale shook his head. "No, it is yours now, shared, not borrowed." Later that day, Ceres visited him, carrying a small metallic orb that hovered beside her like a pet. Her laughter filled the room, innocent yet noble. "You broke Kale's training blade," she teased. "No one's done that in years." Elias smiled weakly. "I think it was an accident." She tilted her head, her silver blue eyes glowing faintly. "There are no accidents with the light, only choices," he chuckled. "You sound like your commander," she grinned. "Maybe he sounds like me," but her smile faded as she placed the orb in his hand. "This belonged to my mother," she said quietly. "She was the last one to bear the mark before you." The orb projected a faint image of a tall alien woman, with glowing eyes and a gentle smile. "She died in the Purge," Ceres continued. "The same ones who attacked us that day want to erase every trace of her bloodline." Elias clenched his fists. "Then we stopped them." Her eyes softened. "You speak like a warrior already." He looked at her and replied, "Maybe I just speak like someone who's tired of watching good people burn." Training intensified. Elias learned how to channel the light through his body, forming protective barriers, kinetic bursts, and resonance strikes that could shatter stone. He sparred with alien warriors twice his size, using agility instead of brute force. Sometimes he failed, bruised, exhausted, humiliated, but every time he fell, he rose again, stronger, faster, more precise. The fortress whispered his name now, Elias Ward, the human protector. But not everyone was pleased one night. As he walked the silent corridors, he overheard two seraph captains speaking in hushed tones. He should not exist, one growled. The bond between air and human is forbidden. The council fears him, the other replied. If the light answers to one outside the order, what stops it from choosing another? Their words cut deep, but Elias kept walking. Pretending not to hear, the next morning, Kyle summoned him to the Hall of Ascension. It was vast and blinding. Walls made of pure crystal where ancient echoes lived. Dozens of seraph warriors stood in rows, their armor glinting with light. At the center stood Cirrus, now wearing a small circlet, the mark of her station. Kyle spoke loudly, his voice carrying through the hall. By decree of the order, we name Elias Ward as the bound protector of House Luma. Some warriors nodded in respect. Others turned away in silence. Cirrus smiled proudly, but Elias felt a chill run down his spine. As Kale placed a ceremonial blade before him, Elias saw something in the reflection. A shadow watching from the balcony above, a pair of red eyes glowing behind ornate armor. And for a brief moment, Elias felt his marks burn painfully. That night he couldn't sleep. He walked to the training deck. Staring at the stars beyond the transparent ceiling, he sensed someone behind him. Kyle, standing silently. You saw him, didn't you? Kale said quietly. The one in crimson armor. Elias nodded slowly. Who is he? Kale's tone hardened. Lord Varun, Cirrus's uncle. And the one who ordered her death? Elias froze. The weight of it sinking in, Kale continued. He hides behind the council, pretending loyalty while plotting to destroy her bloodline. And now, he fears you most of all. Elias looked up, eyes fierce. Then he's right to fear me. Kyle nodded slowly. If you are to protect her, you must be ready for war. As dawn approached, Elias stood before the window, his reflection glowing with the silver light that danced along his veins. He wasn't just a man anymore, not just an engineer lost in alien wars. He was something more, a protector chosen by destiny. And somewhere in the shadows of the fortress, Lord Varun watched with silent hatred, whispering to himself, let the human grow strong. It will make breaking him all the sweeter. But destiny had already chosen its side. And Elias Ward, the human who took the blast, was about to become the spark that lit a galactic storm. The betrayal within. The fortress of the Seraph Order floated above the desert plains like a silent citadel of light. But beneath its beauty, the air had turned heavy. Whispers traveled through corridors, rumors of rebellion, betrayal, and fear. Elias could feel it. Every warrior's gaze seemed sharper. Every conversation stopped when he walked by. Kale had told him to remain cautious, but Elias wasn't built for politics. He was built for action. And now the silence before the storm was unbearable. Cirrus had been kept under heavy guard since her public recognition as heir. Elias stood by her chamber every night, the silver marks on his arms dimly glowing like distant stars. Sometimes she'd wake and find him staring into the corridor, sleepless, haunted. You don't have to protect me every second, she'd say softly, her voice gentle yet proud. Elias would smile faintly. You're right, but I will anyway. One morning the alarms screamed through the fortress. The silver walls rippled as if the structure itself were in pain. Kale burst into the training hall shouting, Energy signature breach, multiple hostiles inbound. Elias grabbed his gauntlets and ran toward the control decks. Through the transparent corridor, he saw explosions outside, the fortress's shields flickering against waves of enemy fire. Who found us this time? Elias demanded. Kale's tone was grim. The Dominion fleet. They shouldn't have been able to track us here. A voice came over the intercom, sharp and cold. They didn't need to find us. Commander, they were invited. The sound froze every warrior in the room. Kale's eyes narrowed. That voice. From the main gates, the doors exploded inward, and soldiers in crimson armor poured through. At their center walked Lord Varun, his armor adorned with black and red sigils, his presence suffocating. Kale drew his blade, shouting, Traitor! Varun's voice was smooth, cruel. Traitor? No, brother, visionary. I simply refuse to let a child and her human pet lead our kind into ruin. Elias stepped forward, his silver marks blazing with fury. You tried to kill her once, he growled. And you'll fail again, Varun smirked. The flame spared her, but it gave you her power. And that I cannot allow. He raised his hand and energy surged from his palm, striking Elias with force enough to throw him across the hall. Elias crashed into a wall, sparks scattering around him, but he forced himself to stand again. I've been hit harder, he muttered, and the light flared through his veins, healing the bruises instantly. Kale and the loyal Seraph warriors clashed with Varun's Crimson Legion. The air was chaos. Plasma bolts streaked through the corridors. Explosions shook the floors, and blades of light clashed in a storm of fury. Elias grabbed a fallen weapon, a Seraph spear, and charged into the fray. Every strike he made was guided by instinct and the light's strange pull. Each movement faster, sharper, as though the universe itself whispered where to move next. Meanwhile, Ceres was being escorted to the evacuation chambers. But as her guards led her through the narrow bridge corridor, one of them suddenly turned. The guard's armor shimmered, revealing crimson underneath, an assassin disguised among the loyal. Before anyone could react, he fired his weapon, striking one guard and sending Ceres to the ground. She screamed, and the sound reached Elias even amid the chaos. The marks on his arms ignited in blinding silver. He turned, feeling her fear like a heartbeat inside his own chest. Ceres, he whispered, and then he moved faster than thought, faster than any human had a right to. He crashed through walls, tore through enemy lines, and reached the bridge just as the assassin raised his blade over her. Elias grabbed the attacker's arm, crushing it with unnatural strength. You picked the wrong air, he said coldly, then hurled the assassin off the bridge into the glowing void below. Ceres looked up at him, tears glimmering in her eyes. Elias, your eyes, they're glowing. He didn't even realize it, but his reflection in her armor showed his irises blazing silver white. Kyle's voice came through the comm. Elias, the core is compromised. They planted bombs. Elias clenched his fists. Get Ceres to safety. Kale protested. You can't go alone. I'm not alone, Elias said, looking at Ceres. The light's with me. He sprinted toward the central reactor, energy pulsing from his steps. The corridor was collapsing, flames and debris everywhere. At the heart of the fortress, he found the core chamber, its radiant engine cracking, leaking streams of blinding plasma. Lord Varun stood there, cloak fluttering in the heat. You're too late, human, he hissed. When this core collapses, the air dies, and the light dies with her. Elias walked forward slowly, his body bleeding silver light. Then I guess I'll just have to stop both of you. Varun drew his weapon, a blade forged from dark matter itself. Their swords clashed, light and shadow colliding in a storm of sparks. Each strike echoed through the metal halls. Every blow fueled by fury, sacrifice, and belief, Varun laughed. You think you're her protector? You're just a tool of fate, and fate is cruel. Elias blocked another strike, forcing Varun back. Maybe fate is cruel, but humans are worse when you push them. Varun roared and unleashed a surge of energy, sending shockwaves across the chamber. The blast hit the core, causing it to crack even further. Energy pouring out like liquid fire. Elias looked up, realizing the entire fortress was moments from destruction. He grabbed Varun's arm, forcing him toward the collapsing core. If this place burns, then you're going with it, Varun sneered. You wouldn't dare, Elias smiled grimly. I already did once. He slammed his hand against the reactor conduit, channeling the Seraph light directly into it. Silver energy exploded outward, countering the instability. The fortress shook violently as light and darkness tore against each other. Kale's voice shouted over the comm, Elias, get out of there! Elias gritted his teeth. Not until she's safe. Varun screamed as the light consumed him, his armor cracking and disintegrating into dust. The explosion of brilliance filled the room, swallowing everything. When the light faded, the reactor was stable again, but Elias was gone. All that remained were faint silver trails burning across the floor. In the control deck above, Ceres felt her bond flicker. She clutched her chest, eyes glowing with sorrow and fury. He's not gone, she whispered. The light doesn't die. It moves. Kale bowed his head. Then where has it gone, my lady? Ceres looked up, her tears turning into a glow of determination. Where he was always meant to be, she said softly. Among the stars, far beyond the fortress, drifting in the silence of space, a faint heartbeat echoed through the void, followed by a pulse of silver light. Elias Ward was still alive. and the galaxy had yet to see what his sacrifice had truly awakened. The Protector's Oath. The void was endless, dark, and cold, yet somewhere between the silence and the stars, something stirred. A heartbeat echoed softly, then another, slow but steady. Elias Ward floated in the emptiness, surrounded by fragments of shattered energy, his body motionless but his mind still alive. The silver light that had once marked his arms now enveloped him completely. Forming a cocoon of luminous mist, he could feel voices, distant, ancient, whispering through the void. "You are not meant to die here, Protector," the voices said, overlapping like a chorus of galaxies. Elias tried to speak, but no sound came. Instead, memories flashed before him, the explosion, the little girl's trembling hands, Kale's voice shouting through static, and Lord Varun's final scream. He felt warmth again, the same warmth from that first day in the desert. A soft glow appeared in front of him, and from it stepped Saris, her form half light, half shadow, her eyes filled with tears and stars. "You kept your promise," she whispered, reaching toward him. Elias tried to move, and the cocoon cracked slightly, releasing a wave of silver light. "I told you I'd protect you," he said weakly, his voice echoing like distant thunder. She smiled faintly. "You did more than protect me. Elias, you protected all of us." The stars behind her shimmered, showing images of the Seraph fortress still standing, repaired, glowing brighter than ever. Kale stood at its gates, leading warriors who now carried both gold and silver insignias, the mark of unity between human and Seraph. "But how?" Elias murmured, "I saw the explosion. I felt it tear through me." Saris's light flickered, her voice soft but strong. "The light chose you, Elias Ward, not just to save me, but to change everything. Your sacrifice became the catalyst, the flame that bound our fates, and the galaxy answered. Around them, the void rippled, massive fleets, alien worlds, and unknown stars bending toward a single pulse of light. Humanity and the Seraph Order had formed an alliance, the first in known history, and his name, whispered across systems, had become legend. Elias looked down at his hands, now translucent with energy. "I'm not alive anymore, am I?" Saris smiled gently. "Not in the way you were, but neither are the stars, and yet they shine forever." He chuckled weakly. "You sound like Kale again." She laughed softly, and for a moment, the void didn't feel so empty. Then her tone turned serious. "The Order faces a new war. The Dominion has not fallen. They have found something ancient, something even the Seraph fear. I can't fight it alone." Elias looked up, his expression calm but resolute. "Then I guess it's time to get back to work." The light around him pulsed faster, cracks forming through the cosmic shell that held him. Saris reached toward him. "You'll need to find your path back, but not as a man. As something greater, the echo of the Protector." He hesitated. "Will I remember you?" Her eyes softened. "Every breath of starlight you see will remember me." The void collapsed into a swirl of color. Blues, silvers, golds, and faint streaks of crimson. Elias felt his body reform, the energy condensing, shaping armor around him unlike any Seraph had ever worn. Silver and black plates interlaced with human design, glowing from within. When his feet touched solid ground again, it wasn't the fortress he knew, it was a battlefield. Ruined, scorched, and filled with the echo of dying stars. In the distance, monstrous ships loomed, dark, jagged, alive with shadow energy. The Dominion had returned stronger than before, led by something ancient that whispered through the static of space. Elias could hear their voices like poison. "You are alone, human. The light cannot save you this time." He clenched his fists, the ground beneath him cracking with each breath. "No," he said quietly. "The light doesn't save me. I save them." He raised his hand, and the light flared out like a beacon, slicing through the darkness. Every Seraph fleet across the galaxy felt the pulse, their ships responding to his call. Kyle, on the command bridge, looked up at the glowing star on his display and whispered, "He's alive." Saris, standing beside him, closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. "No, he's awakened." The battlefield roared as the light descended from the heavens. Elias, reborn as the Celestial Protector, led the charge, his armor blazing brighter than suns. Every strike he made shattered Dominion warships like glass. Every pulse of his energy restored life to fallen warriors. The shadows recoiled, whispering his name in fear, and when the battle ended, the sky itself seemed to bow in silence. The Seraph Order stood victorious, but at the heart of the ruins, Elias stood alone, staring into the horizon of endless stars. Ceres's voice echoed faintly through the light. "You are no longer bound by life or death, Elias Ward. You are bound by promise," and he looked up, his expression calm, his voice steady. "Then let my promise echo forever." He raised his hand once more, sending one final wave of light across the galaxy. It carried peace, memory, and hope, binding human and seraph worlds under one sky, and for countless years to come, every world that looked up at the night saw a silver star brighter than all others. They called it the Protector's Star, the legend of the man who took the blast for an alien child and rose again as the light that never died.